and you start starting the broadcast. Like children are important.
I like where this is going.
When you have too many children in the car in the game of life, we used to make like children cannons. So we used to lay them sideways and they'd stick out from the side and it kind of looked like cannons sticking out of the car. And then when you'd pass one another, we'd make
Pirates of the Caribbean type action.
It was great about the game of life too. Was you always had the day of reckoning. You know, you always hit the house before you went on to Millionaire Acres, and you like dump your kids off. It's like you turn your kids in for like $500 a piece, and then you go on to Millionaire Acres. You're like, bye, kids. I'm like,
man, so if you were to be the person that made the movie version of life, you know, because they make board games into movies occasionally.
Yeah, I personally like Battleship, but anyway.
Yeah.
What so Hungry Hippos?
Hungry Hippos.
That would be awesome, wouldn't it?
They talked about it. They talked about making a Hungry Hippos movie along with the Monopoly film, but that didn't go anywhere.
Monopoly film?
They did. David, you heard about that, didn't you?
Yeah.
The Monopoly film? Yeah.
Everyone tried to be the car or the shoe, right? That was it.
Who should make Operation is Aftermath, the guy who did Aftermath.
There you go.
He should make it.
No, but they were going to make a Monopoly film. I think Ridley Scott was attached to it or somebody, and it was about a guy who gets transported into this world through a bank or whatnot, and it's like he's in this world that's like a Monopoly world.
Okay.
Concept. I'm like, no, I'll just go back to my Battleship. I'll be part of the 3 people who really like that movie. So
it's like a grown-up sweepy. It'd be coming through a bank.
So we're gonna roll here, folks. So, gentlemen, prepare yourselves, and let's do this. And welcome to another episode of The Spoiler Room. Thank you so much for joining us this evening, coming down the stairs and joining us in the Spoiler Room as we're going to talk about a very interesting film that's definitely been in the news lately, thanks to another film that's actually coming out based off of a book that's about the making of tonight's film. And I've got a great crew with me tonight to talk about Tommy Wiseau's The Room. First off, he's back here with us. The man is very busy, but he's taken time out of his schedule to talk with us. It is the lovely Andrew Shearer. Hello, Andrew. Welcome back to the Spoiler Room.
Hey, thank you for inviting me, Mark. And may I just say that, I know that you beat yourself up about your ability to pronounce people's names. But I believe Wiseau is exactly how you say it.
Oh, thank you. I try to practice on some of them, but as far as I'm aware, that is how it's pronounced. That's
it sounded so natural to you.
Thank you.
It sounded like unrehearsed, like you just saw him the other day.
I actually kind of wish I had seen him the other day. I had many questions for him.
Right.
And next to Andrew, back in the Spoiler Room with us, Inside Movies Galore man himself, David. Hello, David. How are you?
I'm doing okay. Yourself?
Doing well. Glad you could join us. And next to him is the Bowtie man himself, Mr. Paul Salzer. Hello, Paul.
Oh, hi, Mark.
There's one. Okay, I knew I was going to get at least one out of you. Only it's more like, oh, hi, Mark.
Oh, hi. I don't have that accent. I can't do accents well. I either do Southern accent or no accent.
Paul, let me get that Southern accent, man. Let me
there you go.
Oh, no, I'm not going to do it now.
Oh, come on. He's from Atlanta. He talk about Southern. Come on, Paul.
Come on.
Oh, no, now I can't do it because it's like trying to perform sex, Now,
Speaking of, how is your sex life lately? Sorry.
It's better than my pronunciation of names. You nailed his last name. I keep calling the other guy, the co-star, I keep calling him Sinestro because I can't pronounce his name.
Sinestro.
Serious.
Wow. Suddenly I came up with this whole comic book film equivalent of The Room. It's awesome.
Yes.
But yes, folks, we are not talking about the one that got all kinds of accolades at the awards show, the movie called The Room. No, we're talking about Tommy Wiseau's 2003 film, The Room. Now, let's see who here tonight wants to give a summary of The Room. I'm going to give it to Paul. Paul,
Dear
why don't you
God.
tell the few listeners who may not be familiar with this what The Room is about?
My truthful thing, or what they say about the film?
What it truly is about. We'll get into the meanings later, but what would, if you wrote the IMDb summary and you had to keep it clean, what did you
Oh,
how would
damn.
you describe Tommy Wiseau's The Room?
It's basically about a banker who finds that his future wife is cheating on him with his best friend, and so this kind of love triangle continues on where she's really cheating on him. She doesn't love him, but keeps telling other people that that he's her, like he's that she.
It's okay.
Okay. All right. Yes. The reason why we're gonna talk about this later. I know.
Yes, we will.
Yes. But essentially, it is about it's a love triangle. It's a story about a love triangle about a guy named Johnny who's a banker. His future wife Lisa is cheating on him with his best friend Mark, and essentially at the very end of it, after they get through this whole like potential wedding, birthday parties, and all these weird little subplots that continue on throughout the entire film, you find that the main character is basically kills himself. Boom, done.
Wow,
interesting.
You have really lived the spoiler room up to its name by basically ruining the end of the show. Way to go for ruining the end of the movie, Paul, so early.
Let's go play football.
Yeah, let's go play football. The Room. The few people out there who may not have heard of it, the infamous So Bad It's Good worst movie ever made, which is going to be something we're definitely going to talk about tonight. I realized myself that I had not actually seen this film from start to finish. I had seen clips, I had seen chunks here and there, never actually voluntarily sat down and watched it from start to finish. And before I give my reaction, we're going to first start with David. David, when you saw The Room finally, did you see it when it was first out and about, or did you see it after it started developing its following?
I actually saw it after it started developing its so-called following.
Yes. And what did you think about it when you finally saw The Room?
I'm still on the fence about how I feel, but my reaction to it is it's just so bad.
But is it so bad it's good?
It's not even that good, but it is quotable.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you can basically quote the film from start to finish. I mean, the film is dubbed.
Yeah,
you can tell it's dubbed, and it's badly dubbed in places. So it's not that it's not the one character that I guess I could say that I enjoyed was Lisa out of
wow.
and this is normally I don't like hate a film this bad. And it's not that that I didn't dislike the storyline. It could have had a storyline.
Sure.
But there were some oddly like softcore porn scenes that I
yeah
of the film. So
yeah. Paul,
Yeah.
Paul, how about you? When you finally saw The Room, I imagine you saw this after the hype was coming about with it.
Most definitely, this is not in my wheelhouse type of film. But when I did watch it, I did. The story really hit me hard because I've been in this same exact position as Johnny. I've lost girlfriends to friends before, including best friends. So I could totally relate to the story, but I would definitely agree that some of the people I didn't really like, especially Lisa. I did not like Lisa. I hiss at her. She's like, I hate her so much. But that maybe is a good thing, because I think that's what this movie is supposed to do, is make you feel. But yeah, the story is, like I said, I could relate to the story because it felt like I was Johnny, with probably not that monotone acting though.
Yeah. No, you've got more inflection in your voice, so you're okay.
I hope so.
Yeah.
I really do hope so.
You do.
But yeah, that was my so that's why I apologize to you right now, because I think throughout most of this podcast I'm going to be doing a lot of grunting and just because I could feel this movie. And
wow.
But it's only because it ties back to something in my past. If nobody had the same experience, I don't know if they would like this film, truthfully.
Wow, nice. I did not expect that. So, well, hopefully this doesn't bring back too many bad memories for you, Paul. And if it did, that's okay. There's, we'll have the room therapy session afterwards, so we'll be okay. And I wanted to save his reaction to laughs because I was very curious. I'm very interested in Mr. Andrew Shearer's opinion as well. Andrew, when you first saw The Room, I imagine, did you see it after the hype, and what did you think about it?
The Art House Theater here in Athens has played it very regularly ever since they opened about 10 years ago. So I went as soon as they showed it because I'd always heard of it but never had a chance to see it. And I'm a big fan of cult film, right? So I can't not be, I can't not go to something like that, right? My opinion leaving the screening of The Room was that I think the movie was actually better than I thought it was going to be, technically, Mm-hmm. It was a great looking movie. But I thought the audience was way worse than the film.
Wow.
I really did not have a good time there. It was quite hostile compared to seeing something like Rocky Horror or Repo Genetic Opera, or I've been to screenings of Showgirls where they know all the lines. But the experience of seeing The Room with the fans was quite different than any other cult film thing I've ever been to. I didn't have a good time.
Wow, yeah, that's because usually the so bad it's good films are fun. You have a fun audience. Everybody kind of laughs along in that, but you're not the first person I've heard that's had that experience watching The Room with an audience. And that's kind of why I wanted to do this show tonight, because in all honesty, when I first started doing podcasts, and as I noticed we were going along and people still wanted to do it with me, I'm like, awesome, great. But I'm like, The Room, you know what? I'm going to stay away from it. I'm going to stay away from it because it's too easy to really lay into this film and slam it. It could be if you just take it at the surface and just go, oh. But even then, it's just one of those things where I'm trying to see the appeal, because I love bad films too. I mean, cult films, those films that aren't the mainstream at all. And I admit it, I had not watched this from start to finish. I watched it in chunks, and watching it in chunks makes it more entertaining than watching it from start to finish. But the impression it got to me when I finally watched this, and this was for the show, was, I think David kind of hit on the head on it. This thing was reminding me almost of a film that you would see at about 11:30 at night on Saturday night on Cinemax, but poorly done. It's someone trying to make a Cinemax, lusty, not quite softcore, but close story. The way he films the love scenes, even though they're hitting the belly button, the love triangle, the storylines. I'm like, this is like, someone had watched those films, the way it came off to me, and wanted to write the film, but they wrote the film in an English equivalent to a cat chasing a red laser pointer on the floor. In that it's running. Oh, and then it stops to lose interest. Then we're back, and then it's this film is the story's all over the place, but it still has a linear narrative, which I've seen films that have far less of a linear narrative than this one. And yeah, Andrew, you're right. The production actually surprised me in this, in that the quality is not that bad. I mean, even the green screen set on the roof, while you can tell it's not a location, it's actually done fairly well for a micro budget green screen. So for me, I guess I'm trying to figure out still why this one hit. And I think it is, and my first question for the group tonight, I'll stop rambling here, but I think what it is at its core, not only just, how people compare it to mainstream films, but it's really boiling down to Tommy. I honestly think a lot of people get into this film and like to riff on it because of Tommy, and I actually felt kind of bad about that. And maybe it's just me, but it really feels like here's a guy who has some possible, issues, maybe trying to make a legit serious film. You can tell it in this film, and people are just so dogging it, and I've called out films before that you could tell take themselves too seriously, but this one, people make fun of it, and it feels like they make fun of Tommy Wiseau. Andrew, what do you think about that? Do you think that's part of it, is people are actually picking not so much on the film but on Tommy?
It depends. I mean, I don't even know where to begin, man. I did feel bad at first, but the more I learned about Tommy, and particularly after Greg's book came out, you realize that Tommy kind of deserves it. The rest of the people in the movie, not so much, but Tommy deserves it because he was definitely a screwed up guy who was treated people really poorly, and was a pretty gross person when it came to. There's a reason why there's 11 minutes of love making in this movie.
Oh, I imagine.
Yeah, you should read the parts he talks about when the auditions were and how long he made these people make out and just sit there watching them. I mean, this is the year of people blowing the doors open on people like Tommy Wiseau. And so while everybody was part of and all of that stuff, he certainly took advantage of a lot of people, and for some severely fucked up reasons that we probably will never know. But the audience was they were bullying it from the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
And I got the feeling that some of them did identify with Tommy's character because they were angry at women, and so they really enjoyed seeing women portrayed as these nothings and being these demons or whatever, because they had anger toward women from things that happened in their lives or something, I don't know. But they also were cheering for Tommy to kill himself, and it was just a lot to take in.
That's harsh, man.
Yes, but like I say, he made the drama and thought he was going to make the greatest movie ever.
Sure.
And he really, but it was mostly a big ego trip. He's a guy who he was a millionaire, and it was not a micro budget film. It was a $6 million movie.
Oh, was that really?
Yes.
Oh,
and
my bad.
He took out a giant.
I always thought it was a smaller budget film.
No. He bought all his cameras. He bought HD and film and shot them right next to each other. And but the big reason was he took out a giant billboard advertising the room, and then four-walled theater in Los Angeles. So, hipsters were all over it.
Wow. See, and like I said, and I do apologize to my audience, I really didn't look too much into The Room, because for me, I never, the hype machine was just like, But
you have to take it at face value. If you're talking about it as just a movie itself, I mean, all your criticisms or observations are totally valid.
Yeah, without knowing the backstory, for me, if you just take what's on screen and people laying into it, I mean, David, do you think part of that is laying into the Tommy character, whether or not from off-screen antics he deserves it, but as far as on-screen, do you think maybe some of this vile stuff that some people say about the film, they're making fun of Tommy himself, which, you know, he's kind of a tragic character in here.
Well, it's kind of hard not to make fun of someone when they're that dramatic on screen.
Mm-hmm.
And he's obviously saying some relatively, antique comments.
Yes.
Or antique lines that have been said before in films before. And the way he says them, the way he draws the words out of his mouth, it is, especially in his somewhat broken English,
Mm-hmm.
at the time, is somewhat, you can somewhat make fun of it. On my podcast, I somewhat, one of the people on there had said something about how every single line that he said, him and his friends would take up a shot and drink at it, or something to that effect.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know what people exactly, they would make fun of him, so I believe that Tommy is a man who tried to started out to do this film his way, but he had a lot of people against him.
Yeah, like you said, I'm not sure. Paul, how about you with the Tommy character as far as on screen and people making fun of him, and as Andrew said, wishing him to kill himself? I mean,
Yeah.
no, he's not that great of a guy, but I mean, that's kind of harsh. You think people are just making fun more of Tommy Wiseau than the actual film itself?
I think so, but it's. I think also too the audiences nowadays are trying to find something to pick on, and because I think a lot of people have kind of grown up with the Mystery Science Theater 3000 type of atmosphere. It's like all of my friends love to pick on movies, well, that aren't actually critics.
Right.
And we like to sit down and we like to joke and pretend that we are witty, and we like to make each other laugh. And I think that's just kind of the nature of a lot of audiences now. And it's so easy with this movie to pick fun at it, because it's a very serious topic, but the characters don't seem to take it seriously. I mean, there's the one line where it's like, don't worry about it, don't worry about it. You keep hearing that throughout the thing. So you can never take these characters too seriously, even though the topic is such a heavy topic. For me, it was a heavy topic.
Right.
And so I think it's just easy for people, especially nowadays, that they just love to pick on films. And he's this guy that seems so naive about the way things are going, and he's so carefree, and he's like it's so weird. He just seems like an alien, because he does. I mean, not in the foreign sense, but I mean from the planetary sense, because he just he goes through life and it like nothing affects him, and you feel like, wow, I don't know if I like this guy very much. So maybe I'm just going to pick fun at him because it's my defense mechanism. I'll feel better if I don't like this guy, because if I like this guy, then I'm more like that guy, and I don't really want to, have everyone think I'm that. So maybe that's it. I don't know.
It's when you actually scratch the surface of this and try to look at this film from a different perspective, I think, than just to slam it.
Yeah.
You start to see some really dark and odd things in here. I mean, we've got his character who I called it a Neil Breen complex. He's the nice guy. He's the
Yeah.
sensitive guy. He's the guy you don't want to hurt, you know. And of course, he's the star and the director. So you know that I could see how audiences have a tough time, you know, taking this film kind of seriously, because he's the guy that's with the women. He's the guy who, you know, and kind of like with the is that Neil Breen, I believe that is that you know, where he's the top spy in all the world, or but yeah, I could see that. But on one hand, I feel bad because I think people they're laughing and they say they're laughing at the film, but I think they're laughing more at him, which, you know, I could see why too. His line delivery's not good at all. He, as I said, this story, the way the screenplay plays out is just, oh my God, the way this story is, but it's still linear. It's still linear. David, you still at least have a linear story in here, even though the dialogue and such are just seems randomly delivered at times. You do still have a linear story in here, don't you?
I do see that there is a linear story in the film, but a lot of the random dialogue that is throughout the film kind of distracts me from watching the rest of it.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, plus you've got the music that sounds like you're listening to like something from like a canon fairy tale.
Mm-hmm.
or Masterpiece Theater or something like that. You know, the music, it kind of sounds more, you know.
Yeah.
the
the music is pretty rough in here as well. Yeah, I definitely.
I will say I did like the beginning scene with what looks like some kind of a castle or something like that. That part I do like.
Oh, sure, right in the beginning. Yeah, there's a few interesting shots, especially the way this film opened a little better than I thought it would. But you know, I've watched many bad films. Paul, you've watched many bad films. Wouldn't you say, though, for as bad as people say this film is, the story there is a linear story in here, isn't there? It doesn't just look like a Rorschach test.
Oh no, it's very much so. I think the problem is a lot of the subplots, and he introduced characters that I thought didn't add to the story in any way. I thought the whole Denny thing was okay. Yeah, it shows that Johnny is a caring guy, but did it really add anything to the triangle? Probably not. The whole mother coming in, the mother seemed like she was supposed to be the outside person. Some of the lines that she said made you think, okay, she represents the audience looking at, you know, why are there so many people coming into this room all the time? You know, that I think was the only purpose for her. And other than that, it didn't add to the triangle. And especially the two friends that kept going to the room and having sex, they were totally not needed in the thing. So yeah, there's that linear storyline, but you had all these weird interweaving subplots and characters that didn't add to the plot. So I think that was where this movie failed on a story aspect, you know.
Yeah, I will say all the extra characters, that character in particular, though, is it Benny or Lenny? Is it? I forgot which one it is.
The kid,
Denny?
Denny is the kid.
That's it, Denny character. I'm glad you brought him up, Andrew. The Denny character and these sub characters, they're just odd. But wasn't the Denny character? Did you feel this character was very awkward? Andrew, did you feel like the way they wrote this character? You didn't know what his real purpose there was, did you?
Well, I mean, I at first I thought, whose kid is this?
Right.
You know, but yet the actor's too old to be a kid, but clearly, you know, Johnny is supporting him somehow, like he's a mentor to him or whatever. It was just a, you know, very kind of strange thing. But, you know, just watching The Room and knowing that Tommy wrote this thing, and he wrote it as a play originally, you kind of get the feeling that all of this was taken from either things that he experienced in his life or movies that he had seen. So it's all this kind of like jumble filtered through this guy who doesn't really understand how human beings work, period. You know?
Yeah.
So Denny right away is in this movie popping up. I think he's attracted to Lisa, which he later
Yeah.
I think fully admits to, but he totally tries to like just come into the bedroom and creep on them while they're together. So it's strange, yeah, it's awkward, yeah, it's bizarre, but I think it's important not to try to read too much into this because it does sort of play like this. You can't know what it might have originally been, and it's not written by a person who really gets it anything of how people interact.
Yeah, it did feel like he was, because I mean we've watched a lot of films, and watching it I'm like, okay, he's borrowed this from this movie, and now he's borrowed this, and so yeah, he could have been just taking his favorite bits and piecing them together, working them in. How do I work my favorite bits into this film? Never mind if the bits actually pertain to the story at all, but I want to add them in here because I like them and I'm making a film.
And never mind that they were bits and pieces of porn that I used to see at like 10 o'clock at night.
Right, on the Cinemax movies, as they used to be called, because that's the way he shot the love scenes. That's why I mentioned it earlier when I said, the impression I got with it, because the way he shoots them with the camera moving and trying to give it kind of this soft, like lighter, playful, intimate thing. I'm like, holy crap, he watched a lot of late night Cinemax films.
Well, and it's important to bring that up too, because you gotta know that like the fan base for The Room, the people that made this thing big or whatever, is a generation after the generation that grew up seeing that stuff. So they haven't really, they have no frame of reference. They haven't seen those movies to know how closely this is to those. It's just like a poorly made version of those, basically. Because the Red Shoe Diaries and all of that. Those were made by professional people, and they were rigorously scheduled and done with no money and no time, and acted by people who were struggling and just needed work, and that has a lot in common with The Room in a lot of ways. But the big thing here is that, because you could take any of those movies, quite honestly, that I just mentioned, and show them somewhere to these people enough times to where they could yell the lines back at them and make fun of the people on screen and anticipate everything and pick something out. There is nothing unique necessarily enough. There's not enough unique things about The Room from films like that to warrant a genuine cult following, except for the fact that they haven't seen any of the rest of those.
Wow, you bring up a good point. I hadn't even thought of that. That, yeah, this generation that's really into The Room had not seen those, either in pop culture or personally late night on cable. But when I was watching this, I'm like, you replaced Tommy Wiseau with some,
Jay Richardson,
Mickey Rourke.
Yeah.
Mickey Rourke. The Blue Orchid is just as bad as The Room.
Oh, Wild Orchid.
Wild Orchid. Sorry, not Blue Orchid. My apologies.
Yeah.
But you knew which one I was talking about.
Oh, totally. And Two Moon Junctions, and I mean, I've seen them all, and as I would imagine, we all have. But these guys don't. I think The Room is too special because compared to what, they don't know.
Yeah, I hadn't thought about it. Paul, what do you think about that? You think that might add to this is the fact they never really knew about these type of films, because by the time they're old enough to pay attention, that's gone the way of the dodo, kind of.
Yeah, because just remember how we felt when we first saw that. We were messing with the tracking dial, to try to get the pause just right, because oh wow, we get to see breasts on a movie,
Or is the guy really naked, or is he wearing a sock or what?
Sock or something? Yeah.
I saw the sock. Yeah, you kind of laugh at it,
I was going to add that I would have liked it better, this film, a lot better, if they would have played up on the whole concept of maybe Johnny had a psychosis where his life was kind of based on all the things that he saw in life. Like maybe they would have had him watch television, and then later on you got to see that come incorporate into his life. I just would have liked that a lot more. The problem was that Johnny came off as being like this, he basically made his ideal version of himself.
Yes.
And said, hey, this is it. I would have loved to have seen a different thing where, yeah, this guy has problems and this is why his life is falling apart. But because his life is falling apart, he falls back on the only thing that he understands, which is maybe the pop culture references or the movies that he's fallen back on. And then that would have made this movie just amazingly better in my mind. And I just wish they would have done that, but they didn't. They didn't.
David, what are your thoughts with that? The fact that, this generation here hadn't really experienced those types of films. So could that be part of the appeal?
I think it very well could play a part in some of the fan base at the base of this film. But I believe that a lot of them do know some of the films that might have played a part in the filming behind the room. Though I have a very negative view of the film, being on my own podcast and listening to others has somewhat, opened my mind a little bit more about the possibilities of what happened, how this film came to be, but still, yeah. This one's a hard one for me to like.
Yeah, well, I like bad films. There's so good films that bad. I was kind of trying to see, approaching this and seeing where the appeal might be, playing off my experience with other bad films, and I was having trouble seeing it. In fact, what really took me out of it, and I'm going to get Andrew's opinion first because I know he probably has just a few opinions, and it's been mentioned not only of how the other female characters are written, but specifically Lisa. Holy crap. Andrew, how'd you feel about the Lisa character and how she was written?
Well, she's horrible. She's an awful person. I mean, she's worse than being a cardboard cutout. She's a punching bag for Tommy and every woman that ever did anything wrong to him, or maybe one specifically, we don't know, in his life that did something horrible to him. And I watching it with an audience, I did see that people are making fun of Tommy, making fun of the way he talks, the things he does. They're making fun of everyone. And yes, at the end, people were yelling, "Tommy, don't do it." Other people were yelling, "Kill yourself," whatever. But I worry for the people that actually take Tommy's side, because clearly they've got issues too,
Yeah.
Because it's different than a normal sympathetic character, because that this guy wrote these women, and specifically that this guy wrote this woman. He's getting a lot of, and I don't remember who said it earlier, but it was a very astute observation. It was Paul who said that Tommy's basically made this movie to make like the idealized version of himself. It was also a way to get revenge on women, and to get revenge on Hollywood, which outright rejected him as an actor and as a legitimate anything. But that's what the thing that fascinates me about this, and the reason why I even think it's worth talking about, because I don't think there's anything special about The Room. I think it's interesting that the guy that made it, instead of being angry or having a good sense of humor about this film that he made seriously and tore his own soul and heart out and spent all his money on, being laughed at by everyone and being okay with that. He just wanted to be famous. He just wanted Hollywood to notice him. And if it means that he's a joke to them, so be it.
The old line from Ed Wood always sticks back to me, and Eddie, this is Hollywood. There's no bad press.
I just no, you're right. But I really don't agree with this film being compared to Plan 9 from Outer Space. I
No.
don't agree with Tommy Wiseau being compared to Ed Wood, who was a damaged person, who had a hard time in life, and who, the movie about Ed Wood sugarcoated him too. They make it seem like his first wife left him because of all the movie making stuff and giving her part to the other girl. He was a raging alcoholic, and that is why she left him. But I hope, because the book The Disaster Artist definitely doesn't sugarcoat Tommy. In fact, you cannot watch The Room the same way after reading that book. But I hope the film Disaster Artist shows the way he treated people and shows what kind of a person that he was.
Yeah, it's you get that impression. There's some demons, or there's some things he's trying to get back at or bury it, and a lot of it's piled onto the Lisa character, but also the mom. The mom is shown as the old school money grubbing, gold digger, if you will, who's controlling of the worst person, which is Lisa. And then you even have the couple who just show up and make love in the room for which I'm just like, and they just sat on the couch. These two were just, I'm like, oh my God. Like the mom and the Lisa sit on the couch that these two were just going at it on. But even then, the woman was the instigator in them doing something in the room. It's
the one part that I laughed. I'm just going to interject this here for just a moment.
No, go ahead.
The one part that I'm going to say that I actually did laugh at is when the one guy from that couple that you were talking about came back for his underwear.
Yeah, that part was kind of ooky but funny. Yeah, I could see the way he did it, but Tommy wasn't in that scene, so that could be why it was a better scene. I'm not sure. Sorry. No, I joke, but no.
See,
It's easy to do, yes, but no, but I'm just saying though that the people in the scene, and I guess why I chided that was because they seemed more relaxed with them there. David, you said you liked the Lisa character, but you got to admit she's written to be
She was kind of a bitch.
Yeah, like full on, like.
But the reason why I liked her is because she was a bitch, and and because that is exactly how some women act out there. At least in my experience growing up, women can be that way, and in relationships, when they're cheating on you, it happens. So for some reason, there's something sexy about the way that that she is.
Wow.
What's the interesting thing is that did you realize that she was actually in a short film years after this film called Who's Checking Up with Denny, where they're somewhat where she's somewhat doing like a where somebody's calling like Tommy Wiseau to her, and it's kind of like a spin-off of When a Stranger Calls. And,
okay.
And I guess it's kind of like a little bit of a independent comedy thing.
Sure.
So. But
well, when you gotta ride that train, right? When it gets popularity, hey, we got to do something to keep it,
but
tied
they
together.
made Tommy Wiseau's voice creepy, calling her. So.
Yeah, and Paul, you said this film hit some strokes with you, Lisa.
Yeah, I I hated her. I hated her with all of my heart. I hated her. Not the actress, her character, Lisa,
Mm-hmm.
because the moment I found out what her actual role being in this story of the cheating, girlfriend type of thing, I totally, my blinders went up and I only looked at all the negative about her.
Sure.
The stuff about he beat me, all the things where she was like, I hate him, and then to his face she would say I love you, and then to basically the best friend she was like manipulating him, and of course I know that's just the idealized, that's Tommy's idealized version of her being the bad guy, but I just couldn't help but not like her because it was like, yeah, this is that one woman, the one or
Yeah.
two women that have done this to my life, and I just really despised her. I was so like, oh, you oh, it was unbearable. And so yeah, I felt for it, and but I don't know, maybe uh, it's just, that's why. And I didn't give her character a chance, and there was no way I was going to look at it from the point of view of this is how she was written. And
Right.
I looked at it from this is the bad guy of the story.
Sure.
Done. And
Sure.
so yeah, but that's that's
So you can see why dudes like to go see this movie and over again and scream slut at her, because Tommy is basically writing from the perspective of someone who's emotionally about 14, 15 years old, and his view of women is some angry teenager, basically.
Well, yeah, and it plays to their emotions, and as Paul's noticed, has mentioned as well, that he has been in those situations. But the thing is, it's hard to say if these people who are at these films having such reaction or being such mean are actually have been in that situation, or they're just, it's feeding a stereotype that they have in their head, and therefore they watch it because it reinforces their thoughts of the way women are, all women are.
yeah.
Well, it's altogether just a very broy experience to go see The Room, to be quite honest. And I'm sure the men's rights people love it, and that includes the female ones, because they lets you just unleash all of that and be like, someone understands me, and then anyone who was bullied, a lot of times turn into bullies themselves and like to bully other things, and certainly going and bullying this movie and all its characters. It's just a lot of yelling and cussing at this movie.
Yeah, I have not experienced the group, and I don't think I will, because I have heard other experiences as well of people doing the same thing at that, and I'm like, I'm not sure if I want to sit in a crowd like that,
Well, it's for 90 minutes as well. Think about Rocky Horror. They might yell slut or asshole at Brad or Janet, but the people genuinely love these characters and love this movie, and there's the songs and all of that stuff too. It's just night and day from what I consider to be cult film, because a movie that has a cult following, or people like a bad movie, let's say, people that really love it, I don't think they really in their hearts think it's bad. I don't think anyone would say that the cult film they love the most is some poorly made piece of shit. I really don't think anyone would say that. I don't know. I don't think you go to The Room because you love it. I think you go to The Room because you hate it.
Paul, what do you think of that?
I'm not going to watch this again. I'll tell you that.
Well,
Yeah, because it's just it's just a horrible thing. Even the ending seemed so much similar to the thing. Obviously, I didn't shoot myself, but I did go through that process. So it was it was just redoing it, and it was you forget how much the humans heal, you know.
Right.
And this movie made me realize just how much I had healed, and then how much I didn't heal, obviously. But yeah, no, I don't know. I think Andrew is right though. People do watch this movie because they want to hate it, and maybe it makes them feel good. Maybe I should watch this movie more so that I get over, you know.
You're not like that, Paul, though.
Oh, good.
So, you know, I don't see you as that at all. And I, you know, the fact that it brought up memories isn't so much, you know, like you said, though, you aren't going to go back because it brought up memories. You don't really want to go back and relive that again. And here we have a lot of people who it seems to be cool to hate this film. And Andrew, you pointed out right that if you get a so bad it's good film, deep down you chide it, you riff on it, and I think that's where the point is with the MSTK. I think that's where people miss the point, because I've watched a few of those films, a number of those films, and while they're riffing it, you can tell there's an actual kind of love for the film, even as they're riffing it, even as they're pointing out that it never feels like they are truly hating the film. David, you've watched a lot of Misty, I imagine. Would you say that, you know, the so bad at good film, do you think it's gotten lost how to riff on a film that's bad but still love it, and people are just hating The Room? I mean, what do you think?
I think that there are those who actually will go out and watch a movie to try to hate it regardless, and that goes for any film.
Sure.
Because I think that people, at least in this day and age, will go out and watch something and try to find something to hate about it.
Justice League. Sorry.
But I think, I've watched this movie twice, once for my podcast, once for this one, and I don't think I will ever watch it again.
But you've watched so bad it's good films, and you know,
it's not so bad it's good film. It's so bad it's bad film.
Mm-hmm.
It's just not watchable again after seeing it twice.
Sure.
And it's not that I want to hate on it or anything like that. I do see what others are seeing in it, but I also don't understand it. And I don't understand the admiration in it. But I also get the fact that it's kind of based on some of his imaginings of what he saw when he was a child in films and whatnot. So I do get that aspect of the film as well. It's just hard to like in the pieced together way that the film is portrayed.
I would have to agree a bit on that. I was trying to see that appeal, you know, expecting something, and I got something else, in all honesty. Would you say that, Andrew, that with MSTK3 people may have the point of what they do got lost, or do you think that they were being just as mean-spirited at these films that weren't quite great?
Well, I mean, if you were to, I could see how you could watch The Room and see it as, like, you know, surrealist art or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And it kind of doubles back on itself, where it succeeds because of what a colossal failure it is at being unique for that reason. You know, Tommy had his script, and then while he's on set, because he has money to burn and time that he can waste of everybody's, and people on the crew who can abuse endlessly, although they had 4 different DPs. I mean, camera person after camera person just completely quit, because it's got to be a maddening experience, because
Sure.
you know it's not going to cut together right. It's going to be, you know, head-spinningly terrible. And the movie itself is extremely boring, very, very plodding. You know, you take out the stuff that doesn't matter, that has no bearing on it whatsoever, and you really just have a short, you know. So the people that are into Mystery Science Theater movies, I've been to some screenings. We have in Athens, we have this thing called Bad Movie Night. And I went to it, and it looked to be expertly curated. They were showing some VHS type stuff from the 80s and some cable type stuff. And I was very impressed by some of their selections. And I went a couple times, and it was fun. People laugh at stuff and things that are cheap or cheesy or ridiculous or whatever. But when the people that appointed themselves the Mystery Science Theater of this event started yelling at the screen, the things that naturally made the film funny because they were inept or bizarre, you couldn't hear those things. It was all about these guys just yelling, and they thought they were funny. Mystery Science Theater, let's not forget, are writers and comedians. These people are qualified to make fun of movies this way. These people were just assholes. And it made them feel superior to do this. I don't think they liked the movie at all. In fact, the scenario is set up that this isn't good, so tear it apart. And I walked out, and I never came back to any of them.
And I've always felt there's a difference to that. And man, I hope at all I'm not coming off as, oh, movie snob. Oh, you think you're better. I don't think I'm better than anybody, but I just, when I look at a film, if I riff on it, I still love it. But so many people seem to just want to hate the film because it's bad or a low production or not well made per the norms. And they want to, rip on it because it makes them feel better because maybe the film makes them feel uncomfortable.
Yeah, well, I mean, look at the best and worst Entertainment Weekly of the year just came out, and number one worst movie named by Entertainment Weekly was Emoji. Now, if you want to talk fish in a barrel, how easy was that target? You don't need to have seen the movie. You just need to know it exists to say it's the worst thing. I thought Emoji was a fine movie.
Really?
Oh, yeah.
Andrew.
I liked it. I liked it way more than some other kids' movies I saw this year. Trust me, this year was one of the worst movies for kids. And Emoji wasn't the best one,
No,
but it was in the upper tier of kids' movies this year. I thought it. I don't want to make this about the Emoji movie, but I did not hate it. My family didn't hate it either. We were just like, I don't know if the bar was set so low because what the fuck is this going to be? But I think because they knew that they were the Emoji movie, they had similar to the way that Lego was and the way that Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs was. Not saying it's as good as those. I'm just saying they had a lot going against them as writers, and therefore really tried hard to make up for it. And it succeeded more than it failed, I thought. But my point in even bringing it up is that professional critics like to shit on things. I had at a screening a critic turn to me and go, I hate movies, before the movie started.
Oh, what? Jesus.
Yep.
Wow.
He said it with a smile on his face.
And he's probably a Rotten Tomatoes critic too, and he adds himself on there. And no, just kidding.
It's an easy thing to do, but deep down, it's broken people. And liking things is not as cool as not liking things. Period. Because liking things just makes you a plain old geek, and I'll take it.
Yeah, trust me, I've gotten it to where I've liked things that people have hated films, or I didn't think a film was totally horrible, and I've heard about it from a few folks, especially with the indie stuff that I cover, the lower budget stuff, similar to The Room, not quite, I mean, a little bit above The Room quality at least, but I found, enjoyment in it, and I get comments all the time going, how could you like this piece of shit? This was horrible, this fucking shit. And I'm like, okay.
Yeah, but I not to make this about me or take over the air, but my movie Space Boobs in Space on Amazon Prime, a lot of the comments, I have mostly 1-star reviews on it. A lot of them say this is the worst movie I've ever seen. This is the worst movie ever made, which makes me happy because, God, you want to give me that kind of credit. A lot of my heroes, have been called that too. But what I do is I click the trail and I go, okay, let's see what this person does think is a great movie if this one is the worst.
Right.
But all their reviews are 1 star, and all they can talk about is what they hate.
Mm-hmm.
So you think about that.
Yeah, it's true. It's easier to hate on something. Paul, with you, with Misty, do you think the message kind of has gotten lost of because they're writers, as Andrew pointed out, they're comedians, they're writers. They watch these films probably more than once or twice to write the jokes for them.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, you get people at showings of The Room that are shredding it because they're enjoying shredding it, but there's no real, I don't know if there's real enjoyment in it. What do you think? You think the Misty message may have gotten lost over the years?
Ooh, yes, I think what Andrew said was spot on about how people the Mystery Science Theater 3000 people are very much qualified to do that sort of stuff. And when basically we do it, it's fun to do it on your own. Just don't expect other people to think that you're the next best thing to, like, sliced Limburger cheese. I don't know.
God, man.
But yeah, I mean, it's and then when you watch the actual show, you can tell that they like it because and the things that they say are not entirely harmful. They just kind of say things that are kind of in the moment, and it's funny for that specific thing. Whereas when you just kind of say, ha ha, you pick fun at the chicken dancing going on in the thing, and the sheer number of football passes in it. I mean, that's easy to pick on, but it's like, well, what if you do what I do and try? You probably shouldn't do this, but try to find some significant meaning in that whole exchange. Because to me, it was just like, okay, it was a really an interesting way to kind of show how communication is, how you take a thought and you give it to the next person, and then they add to their thought, and then that sort of stuff. But it's just so much easier to say, heh, or that guy fell down for no particular reason. It's like, well, come on, guys. It's
well, it's like Weird Al, right? I mean, it's an honor to be parodied by him.
Yeah, truly parodied, right? Not to be hated on. Yeah, exactly.
And if a film gets the MST 3000 treatment, that's kind of a cool thing because they thought, they enjoyed the film, they found enough enjoyment in the film to bring it on the show and write some jokes about it. But I've never felt that their jokes were hateful jokes by any means. They're pointing out the ridiculousness of it, which, in all honesty, my buddy and I, we've grown up. It's in our DNA. It's ingrained. Star Wars. First film I ever saw in the theater. I will tell you that my friend and I have sat down and watched Star Wars, a film that we truly love, and have ripped it sometimes for pointing out some of the ridiculousness or, some of the bad dialogue or whatever. But we aren't hating on the film. With The Room, it just feels like it's chic to hate this film and not hate it because it's entertaining enough to where you love it. You hate it to hate it because it's so easy to do. At least the number of the people's reactions I've seen online for that. What would you say, David? Would you say that it's more just a hate to hate rather than, oh, I love this film, so I pick on it? It's more of, man, I hate this film, I'm going to rip on it.
I think a majority of it is the hate to hate on it, but I also think that it's a little bit of both too.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's hard to say that it's hard to point the finger at people and say you're going to go and watch that film and you're going to hate it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but from what I've heard, there are people probably did hear about it, how bad it was, and went to go see it just to hate it.
Mm-hmm.
So I think someone went and saw it, came out and said, "This is a piece of shit." Called up his friend and said, "You've got to go see this movie. It's so bad."
Right.
And they probably went, and they were probably the crowd that was there with Andrew. And yeah, so
But
yeah, go ahead, Paul.
I was going to say, when watching this film for the podcast, I found it extremely difficult to find. I went to the video store, couldn't find it. Went to Walmart, couldn't find it. I went online, couldn't find it. None of the streaming services have it. So where are these people watching the film to be able to criticize it? I'm thinking they went to YouTube and saw little scenes of the best of the worst of this movie, and that's what they're picking on. They're not really picking on the film.
Well, it's hard to say what they're. The full movie is on YouTube, though.
I was just saying, Athens, they are just
they're
going
showing in
regularly.
different places. Yeah,
like they play the movie a lot. Like I've never seen it. Well, why would I have watched it again? You know,
right?
But like it's I mean, you can buy it on Amazon. You can buy it from Tommy's website. They got a Blu-ray and a DVD on Amazon. But
yeah,
it's
but not streaming. You can't stream it.
Well, I mean that's up to him, you know.
Yeah.
But like, they are repeat watchers. I know people who go every time Cine plays it, and they play it several times a year.
Mm-hmm.
They're playing it this coming weekend. So it's the repeat viewings. As a kid, I got into Rocky Horror by going to it. I went every Friday and Saturday night for years.
So do you think going to it, they maybe start develop? I mean, I know this is all hyperbole, all speculation. I'm not trying to come off as I'm just trying to understand the how this film grew like it did, because I've seen so many better horrible films that not nearly have gotten the attention this has. So Andrew, do you think it's because of the repeat viewings it may change to where they grow a bit of an affection to it?
I have to, you know, you watch it enough times that you grow familiar with it, you know, and it just becomes like something that it's like listening or watching anything, you know, people that follow a TV show. It's familiarity, you know, and but also the room was set up from the beginning to be this thing. I mean, the only people that saw it when it made its, I don't think it made $2,000 when it opened in Los Angeles. It is what it is because of, you know, that hipster embrace of it as this movie that you go and talk back to as a cult film. And, you know, those movies can't be like manufactured as much as like the Sharknado people want to, or the Birdemic guy wanted to. You don't fake that. The audience finds these things on their own and embraces them on their own, completely outside of anything a promoter or a filmmaker or a studio can do. And so that was something that for The Room was made, you know, the people went and saw it and they're like, oh, this is hilarious. You got to come see this. And the people that made it knew that it was going to be ridiculous. And the first time Sestero saw it, he talks about showing it to his parents. He had a tape of it and they were just like, oh God, rewind that. They just can't believe it. You have a lot of people who have just never seen anything like this before and would never watch something like The Greasy Strangler or Basket Case or even like Nurse 3D or Showgirls. They would never watch a movie like that. My friend Link's video store closed down after being in operation since the 80s because he had a huge cult section and lots of exploitation film. He's like, the kids now don't want to see this. He's like, their idea of a good movie is what they've seen on cable and what they've seen on TV and what they've seen at the theaters. That's a very different movie from what you and I grew up seeing on cable and TV and even in theaters in some points.
Yeah.
Very different.
Yeah, and that's what I've kind of boiled down this to, is just a generational thing, you know. And if you do love it and you love to riff on The Room, but you've grown an affection to it, more power to you. You know, it's just in an age now where people are loving to hate on things just to hate. It's tough to see, and then you get a film like this, like The Room, and yeah, I I've seen better, worse films than this. Got nearly not the attention that they probably should, considering the way what The Room is. But maybe it's just The Room struck at the right time and hit the right chords. I guess I'm not sure with it, but Paul, what do you think? Why the popularity with this film? People call it so bad it's good, but I think that's a little bit of a stretch, but that's just personal definition. But what do you think the final thought here on why this film has grown where it has?
I think I hinted at it earlier. I think it's just it's become acceptable. Acceptable is not even the right word. It's almost like popular to pick on films nowadays. I think people feel that's. I mean, look at all the reviews that go out there. Just even on movies that are not bad, that we would consider not bad. People just they poke fun at it because that is what everyone wants. And all the popular things like honest trailers or how it should have ended kind of poke fun at these things. And I think everybody, all the viewing all the current viewers, the audience members, they think that that's how you're supposed to look at films now, and it's almost like it has to be cynical. And I don't agree with them. I think that films can be looked at differently. Like this film, even though I didn't like a lot of it, it did its job. It made me feel something, even if that was a bad experience for me, but it still made me feel, and it did its job. So yeah. But yeah, to answer your question, I think it's just it's what's expected now, and maybe I'm just generalizing the the populace, but that's how I feel. I feel that that's the reason why this is becoming popular, is because hey, I finally found a movie that I don't feel bad about riffing on,
Right.
And it's too easy. Come on, guys. Too easy.
It's films that are too easy. David, how about you? Your final thought with why you think this particular bad film has just grown the way it is. Is it this hate culture that seems to have developed over the years with just hating on a film to hate?
I think, well, when I first watched this, which was several weeks back, and like I said, I'd seen it after the hype. I didn't see it when it came out, but I think this is one of those films that I guess the reason why of the popularity is it's a film that you can enjoyably hate.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what I'd sum it down to, because that's what people seem to be doing to it. Like Paul said, there's always a difference between the moviegoer and a difference between the director, and there's always a difference between a critic and a reviewer.
Mm-hmm.
There is always that marginal difference. Those that go out and just say everything that they hate instead of saying bits and pieces that they might have possibly liked. Sure. And that's just it's just there. I mean, there's even a group of fanboys or fandom that I consider fans of films. Fans of films that are just diehard fans and will not stray from being a fan.
Mm-hmm. Everything is good. There are people
stray from liking Ghostbusters or something to that effect. And if they make another movie like it, I'm just going to find something to hate about it.
Right? It's people that look specifically for something because they've set their mind that they're going to hate it. I've seen that person personally. That I've seen that person not like in physically, but in chatting and seeing what they've posted and such, there's people out there that already made up their mind that they hate the film. Before they go in, it's bad. And they go in and yep, sure enough, look, when you go into a film thinking it's going to be bad, you're immediately going to jump on more things, I think, that may not be perfect to help validate that feeling going into it. And I did that when I was younger. I fully admit it. I've done that. I've learned over the years, but when I was quite young, there were a few films like, oh man, that looks stupid. And then I go see it and go, there was some continuity issues or plot or something. They're like, yep, see how bad, so.
I tell my fiance that all the time when I'm watching films with her. If you're going to hate it before you see it, at least sit down and watch it first before you before you even have a judgment call.
Mm-hmm. And don't get me wrong, I'm not saying The Room's not a good film. Okay, I'm not saying that at all. Part of the reason I wanted to do this show tonight, and I know we're going a little long, and we'll wrap it up here, is just I wanted to try to figure out and get other people's opinions exactly what they think might be what it is about this film. Is it the film itself, or is it the culture now? And this film just happens to be the one that it's focused on, but is it the culture more that we have today that has made it a cult following versus it actually being a so bad it's good film? Andrew, I guess you'll be the last of the night. What do you think? You think maybe the culture is the reason why this film has taken off rather than it being an actual so bad it's good movie?
Yeah, because to be honest with you, if The Room had the production value of the truly bad movies that I have seen and that continue to get made, they would not have embraced it in such a way. It wouldn't have millions and millions of YouTube hits or Amazon Prime streams or whatever else. Because The Room has the look of a good movie to them, it legitimizes it in a way for them. There are far worse movies than The Room that were made by much better people that just did not have the money that Tommy Wiseau, and that's an important thing to remember when you're talking about The Room, is that he had millions to put into the production. He had millions to put into the advertising, and he was in Los Angeles. There was an awareness of The Room, not unlike there was an awareness of Angeline or anything else like that. He really went all out. And so people saw it and they're like, oh, this thing is terrible, because it was very, very expensive. And people watch The Room and they're like, oh, I can watch this movie. They start laughing when the logos come up. They start laughing when the titles come up. The whole thing is set up to do that. So it's the opposite of people discovering a film and embracing a film that was at first rejected, because of course The Room got awful reviews. How did it even get reviewed at all? The guy had the money to put it into theaters in Los Angeles. You know what I'm saying? I mean, it is a unique movie because of that. What makes it special among other movies that were made by lunatics? Do you know?
Yeah.
The money.
And what is that, David?
He bought the audience. That's pretty much what he did.
Yeah. Good or bad.
And he invited them to make fun of him.
Mhm.
That's the whole premise. That's the whole setup. So, but yes, it could not have happened in the 70s or the 80s or the 90s, because people still liked movies of all kinds, and people still had the patience for weird low budget stuff, and people still had an interest in weird low budget stuff. But now it's not there anymore. They see a movie that looks like it was made on video or cheap video or cheap film and is out of focus and the sound is bad. That's not a movie to them.
Right. And you're totally right with that, because reviewing many of the films that I review, and I've always considered myself a reviewer, not a critic, but the films that I've reviewed for indie stuff, is lower production stuff. And it took me a little while to look past that. As I gotten older, I've looked past that, and there's some really good stuff there, but it's stuff that people can't get they can't get past the poor visuals, or maybe the audio is off, so they can't get past that and enjoy it. And you're right, now that you mention it, if The Room was shot on $5,000, it would have sat in obscurity on VOD, and one person would have started on Amazon, and it would gotten probably nowhere except living there with the rest of the lower budget, micro budget films out there. But knowing, and I learned something tonight. I always assumed it was a little bit lower budget, but the fact that it had 4 million and
No, 6 million, dude.
or 6 million, Jesus, that makes total sense now of how it kind of got out there, was because he had the money to put out there. Whereas there's films that are better that people can't get past just because someone only had one camera and they could only rent it on a weekend, you know? And so they had to shoot everything they possibly could that day. So yeah, you're right. I think that kind of nails it on the head, is that it had the money to kind of buy its bad publicity.
Yeah, and the irony is a lot of those bad movies make a lot more sense.
Yep. I will totally agree with you on that. So we're going to wrap it up for the night. Went a little longer than expected. I appreciate our crew here joining me to discuss this film. It was a film, like I said, I really tried to avoid for a long time, just because I'm like, I kind of know what I'm going to get myself into. And but with the Disaster Artist coming out and seeing so many people hype and talk about it, I had to see it for myself and try to get an understanding what it is about this film. And I think Andrew gets the award tonight for hitting it on the head with that it was money. It was money to get it out there to get the bad press. And yeah. So this is going to be the point of the show where we're going to have people shill the hell out of themselves, let you know where you can find them when they aren't here talking to me and hearing me babble on. So, Andrew, why don't you go first? Where can these fine folks check your stuff out, sir?
Mark, thank you for having me on, and thank you everybody for the great discussion. I'm sorry if I rambled. I try not to do that. I don't want to take up too much of the air. So I appreciate everybody being patient with me. I've never talked about The Room on anything or written about it. So this is my, probably getting some of that out for the first time. Like I said, on Amazon Prime, I have a few movies that you can watch that my friends and I have made here in Athens, Georgia. The latest one is called Space Boobs in Space. And there's also May of the Dead, MAE, and Very Scary. I have a few on Prime. Then I have some other ones that are just regular video on demand: Pajama Nightmare, Late Night Cable, The Underground Cinema, Cinema with an S, Mondo Gonzo, Fake Blood. There's a bunch on there, and they were made with camcorders and really cheap. But we love them. So
well, it's made with love. They're made with love.
Oh man, yeah, not much money, but I'm not making it. I would never make an excuse for my movie. They came out just like I wanted.
And David, where can we find you at, sir?
Well, you can find my Movies Galore Milwaukee blog and group on Facebook. You can also find my podcast on Facebook and YouTube. And now you can find it on Podcast Garden, which I put a cool new intro for. And I guess I can say that I am one of the producers behind Wrestle Massacre, which is coming out in 2018. Once again,
my interest is peaked on that one. So
my interest is peaked on it too. He said he's got like 3 more shoots on it, and then he's done. So, definitely interested. I think he's going to be using the Cuban Assassin, which he was the Cuban Assassin's son, actually.
Oh, nice. That's cool.
He was in a short film in Frames of Fear, the first one.
Mm-hmm.
And then I guess he's using a few other legends that have been
very
taken
cool.
and hired on hand to do so. It's just there's
Very cool to hear. Yeah, WrestleManiac had Rey Mysterio Sr. in it, and that one was kind of fun. That one was a wild, crazy film. So, wrestling horror, folks. There's a new genre that needs more entries into it. And Paul, how about you, sir? Where can they find you at, sir?
You can find me primarily at the Astro Radio Z Network, at both the Forsaken Film Reviews podcast and Film Jerks. And you can also find some information at newhorrorfest.com. It's about our Northeast Wisconsin Horror Film Festival, and we start taking film submissions in exactly 1 month from today. So,
woohoo! So, filmmakers out there, keep your eyes peeled for that one. All these fine gentlemen have fantastic stuff you should check out, and I appreciate them for coming on my show, and I appreciate all my listeners out there. We get new ones all the time. I check it out, and people are listening to our show, and let me tell you, I really appreciate it. With so much stuff out there for you to come and visit to our little sliver of the internet and hear me ramble with ideas you probably don't agree with. I really appreciate it quite a bit. So I think tonight we'll end it. Usually we say good night, gentlemen, but why don't you all just say goodbye, Mark, in your best Tommy Wiseau. In 3, 2, 1.
Goodbye,
Bye, Mark.